EA Sports created quite the outcry last week among the rank and file college football fans when they revealed their team and unit rankings ahead of college football 2025's much anticipated July 19th release date, with one of the most egregious injustices, at least in the minds of many college football fans on social media, being EA Sports having Georgia ranked as the number one offensive unit in the country, tied atop those offensive rankings with Oregon with a 94 offensive rating. But if you've been paying attention over the past 2 to 3 years and have even the slightest bit of an ability to look beyond your narrow team bias, you would realize that not only is it entirely defensible for EA Sports to have Georgia ranked as the number one offense in the country in college football 2025, you'd realize that EA Sports actually kind of got it right.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? I'm Tyler, and this is Glory UGA Plus, where I bring you a small sample of what we've got going on the Glory UGA podcast. This video, as always, is brought to you by our great friends at Alumni Hall. We're going to find the best selection of Georgia gear anywhere on planet Earth. You can find things like this guy and a ton of other stuff, so check them out today. Make sure, guys, if you enjoyed today's video, if you like this content, subscribe to this channel right now. Like the video, comment. I think this is one of those topics that will probably elicit quite a range of opinion on different sides of the equation. So I'd love to hear from you guys, hear what you think. But most importantly, if you do enjoy today's content, make sure that you check out the Glory UGA podcast wherever you get your podcast for more content just like this, designed for you guys, most diehard Georgia fans anywhere out there. But all right, Georgia ranked as the number one offense in the country, according to EA Sports in their unit rankings ahead of the release of college football 2025. I think that caught some people off guard. If Georgia was ranked number one in the defensive unit, I think people would have been cool with that. But number one offense? That doesn't check out in the minds of a lot of college football fans out there. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not sitting here saying I think EA Sports got it right all the way across the board with these rankings. For example, I think they were way, way too high on Colorado, like wildly out of control high on Colorado. They were too high on the Clemson offense, in my estimation, having them in the top 10. I think they were way too low on the Ole Miss offense. They should have been, in my estimation, inside the top 10. But is ranking Georgia as the top offense in the country, tied with Oregon, as egregious as some are making it out to be right now? I think if you've been paying attention, certainly over the last 2 years, you'd realize pretty clearly the answer is, of course not. Of course not. Diehards and those who actually know ball, you get it. Like, you understand what the Georgia offense has evolved into over the last couple of years, certainly the last 2 years in particular, because, you know, those people, they actually pay attention. They don't, actually watch the football games and don't just stat watch. But I do think, at least the last couple of days has revealed, social media certainly, that the average, casual college football fan, or maybe those blinded by their team bias, they're still clinging to this conception of the Georgia offense based on what it was back in the early days of the Kirby Smart tenure, which is when it was kind of just along for the ride. They're clinging to that conception. And like, we all remember those days, guys. It wasn't all that long ago, right? Remember 2016, the Georgia offense, you starting a true freshman, Jacob Eason, not a great look. 2017, you think, okay, year two, Jacob Eason will be a little bit better. He goes down early in the year. You got another true freshman, Jake Fromm, starting. So, you remember that conversation, all the talk about Kirby not allowing the offense to open up, Kirby just being kind of this old school defensive guy that couldn't get out of his own way. The offense would never be good enough under Kirby Smart, have a great defense, always recruit well enough, but offensively would never quite get there. But what those stuck in the past back in those days failed to realize, or maybe they just failed to admit it right now, maybe they can admit it to themselves right now, is that the Georgia offense heading into 2024 is a far cry from what the Georgia offense was in 2017, certainly in 2016. Because I think whether people want to accept it or not, the reality is the Georgia offense has evolved into one of the most productive, dynamic, explosive, elite offenses in the entire country in recent years. Now, to be fair, this notion of Georgia's offense as some antiquated relic, it does have basis in fact. It's rooted in fact. That notion didn't just appear out of thin air. It does go back to the early days of Kirby Smart's tenure where, yeah, we were, as an offense, as a program, seemingly hesitant to open things up, right? But I think you have to, at least to some degree, consider the context of the personnel, what we had on hand at that time. You have an incredible stable of running backs with Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel. You got true freshman quarterbacks in 2016 and 2017. So it makes sense early on that we kind of leaned into the run, and we were certainly not as willing to put the ball in the air, put the ball in harm's way, because we didn't have the trust of the coaching staff when it came to throwing the football with those young quarterbacks. But guys, those days are long gone. They're long in the rear view. In recent years, I mean, it's clear, guys, Georgia offensively has unequivocally, it's clear, evolved into one of the best offenses in the country. And if you don't believe me, just like, here's some numbers to bear this out. I'm going to have a lot of numbers for you guys to back this up today. But for 2 years running, okay, Georgia has finished inside the top 5 nationally, not just in the SEC, top 5 nationally in total offense, yards per play, and FEI, which is a great efficiency metric that's adjusted for opponents. Actually, Georgia's finishes inside the top 3 in FEI over the last 2 years. But guys, there's no other program in the country that can say the same thing. No other program in the country besides Georgia has finished inside the top 5 nationally in those 3 categories: total offense, yards per play, and FEI. So you can stay stuck in the past all you want. That's fine. That's your prerogative. Do your thing. But you'd also just kind of be factually wrong because, again, the Georgia offense, if you've been paying attention, has truly evolved into one of the elite units in the country. And look, this evolution was gradual at first. It didn't happen overnight. It took some time. But in the last 3 years, certainly, again, the last 2 years especially, it has accelerated tremendously. And yeah, Georgia, I mean, just look at the numbers, guys. I'm going to throw them out here to you guys in just a minute. Georgia has catapulted its offense inside the top 5 nationally in most major offensive categories. And I know what a lot of you are thinking right now, especially if you're not a Georgia fan, you came across this video. You're sitting here saying, well, dude, you run a Georgia podcast. Of course you said that, man. You're just a homer. You're the one, man, who's lost touch of reality. You're just overselling your own team. But see, I anticipated that skepticism. I know, guys, I know what the popular conception of the Georgia offense still is in a lot of minds out there in the college football landscape. So I anticipated that skepticism, and I came armed with some facts to back up everything that I'm saying here. So here are the numbers from a raw production standpoint, dating back to Kirby's first year in 2016 to where we were last year in 2023. So what do we see here? I mean, this is not every stat possible. I admit that. I can't throw every stat out there. I don't want to overload you guys. Only so much fits on a screen. But the theme is obvious here. The Georgia offense under Kirby Smart has clearly evolved into one of the most prolific offenses in the country. I mean, look at the numbers here, guys. It's hard to argue that. So 2016, clearly, Georgia, not good enough. 2017, better, but still not elite. 2018, a little bit better, still not elite. 2019, massive regression under James Coley being promoted as offensive coordinator. We fixed that mistake after 1 year, bringing Todd Monken in 2020. And now you see the numbers improve from where they were in 2019. But that was a COVID year. Didn't have a full year of off season working with the guys, installing your offense, and also Jamie Newman comes over. Yeah, remember that guy? Jamie Newman comes over from Wake Forest as your transfer quarterback, presumptive starter. He opts out. J.K. Daniels is your backup option that you get from the portal. Kind of surprisingly, his knee's not ready. It's a longer recovery than anticipated. So you got Dwan Mathis. Yeah, remember that name, and then Stetson Bennett, who was not the Stetson Bennett we will eventually know and love in 2021, the latter part of 2021, and certainly in 2022 when he was a Heisman Trophy finalist, wasn't that guy yet. So 2020 better, but still not elite. 2021, again, improved, not elite. You're moving inside the top 5 in yards per play, top 10 in scoring offense. So getting there to that point, top 5, top 3 in FEI. But 2022, as you can see, this is where things explode. This is where Georgia starts to accelerate its improvement offensively and jumps inside the top 5 in really every major statistical category. Again, this is just a small sample of those categories, but there's any category you want to throw out there offensively. Georgia's top 5 essentially last year and also in 2022. So top 5, 501 yards per game, 7.17 yards per play. 2023, essentially the same thing. Todd Monken goes on to the NFL. We bring Mike Bobo back as offensive coordinator, elevate him to that job. A lot of Georgia fans weren't thrilled with that. Still, a lot of Georgia fans are not thrilled with that, which I don't quite get because look at these numbers. Once again, top 5 nationally, yards per play. Top 5 nationally, total offense. Top 5 nationally, scoring offense. Top 5, top 3 nationally in offensive efficiency. Actually, the highest FEI rating in Georgia's, in the Kirby Smart tenure here at Georgia. So, again, guys, you can see, gradual at first, but then a rapid acceleration in the prowess of this Georgia offense in 2022. So, this notion of the Georgia offense as some antiquated relic of a bygone era is just so widely misguided at this point that you can't help but laugh at it. It's comical. Like, that's what it is at this point. Was there a time where the Georgia offense was what some people still think it is? Sure, yeah. Early on in the Kirby Smart tenure, yeah, that is true. But as I just laid out, we have seen this gradual improvement that exploded in 2022, didn't slow down a bit in 2023, despite all the injuries Georgia dealt with offensively and a brand new starting quarterback in Carson Beck. And this offense shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon. But here's the thing, too. This Georgia offense, I just laid out for you guys, it's improved relative to itself, sure, but it's more than that. The Georgia offense has not just improved relative to itself. It has, as I keep telling you guys, become one of the truly elite offensive units in the country. So I ran these numbers too. So if you look at these stats here, so what I did is I went back and I looked at the last 2 years. So again, that's where the Georgia offense has really kind of taken on a new life and become one of the top 5 offenses in the country. So over the last 2 years, I ran the numbers and I've got a 2-year average for these teams in yards per game, yards per play, scoring, and FEI. So these are the top 5 teams over the last 2 years that have put up the numbers in yards per game, yards per play, scoring, and FEI. So you look at yards per game. Georgia, over the last 2 years, has finished on average with the second best yards per game average, just a hair under 500 yards, 499 yards per game. Oregon, number 1, obviously 550, almost 516 yards per game. Yards per play. Over the last 2 years, Georgia has, on average, finished with the 4th best yards per play, number 7.21 yards per play. Scoring offense, Georgia has finished 3rd over the past couple years, over the past 2 years, with a scoring average of 40.6 points per game. FEI, Georgia has finished 2nd on average over the last 2 years with that 1.68 FEI rating. Guys, Georgia is one of only 3 teams. You see the numbers right here. Georgia is one of 3 teams, along with Oregon and USC, to average a top 5 finish in each of these 4 categories over the last 2 seasons. Yes, Oregon has been slightly better than Georgia. Georgia has been slightly better than USC. But at the very least, Georgia has been one of the top 3 offenses over the last 2 seasons. Sorry to disrupt the narrative for those of you still clinging on to it, but those are just the facts, man. I'm just laying it out for you. You do what you want with them. That's not up to me. I'm just throwing the facts out there. But look, I can hear the haters now. Well, Tyler, you just said that Oregon has been better than Georgia over the past 2 years. Well, yeah, that's true. They have been. I mean, the numbers are what they are. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, it's right there in front of us. That's also relative to the Pac-12 defenses, though. Got to throw that out there, but still true, regardless. However, what your offense has been in recent history, well, that's certainly part of the equation. It has to be part of the equation. It's not the entire equation, right? After all, this is a projective exercise, right? We're trying to project to what these offenses will be this year in 2024. So to do that, yeah, you combine recent history, which again, Georgia, I would argue, has been top 2 over the past 2 years, certainly inside the top 3, along with Oregon and USC. And then you have to also look at the talent and experience that offense has returning this year when you're trying to make that projection. So if it is down over the last 2 years to Georgia, Oregon, and USC as the top 3 offenses in the country, which of those 3 offenses projects to be better this year? Well, let's look at it here. All right, USC, they're breaking a brand new quarterback in Miller Moss. looked good in the bowl game last year, looked solid there, but still a brand new quarterback starting for a full season for the first time, being the guy for the first time, but talented guy, should be pretty good, certainly with Lincoln Riley calling the plays there. Two really talented options at receiver in Zachary Branch and Deuce Robinson. But while those guys are clearly extraordinarily talented, Deuce Robinson actually came in kind of as a tight end. Now he's not like a jumbo receiver. But you're still relying on potential there, man. Like Zachary Branch, Deuce Robinson, they might both be awesome this year, like 1,000+ yard receivers. But you also have to admit neither guy has done that yet. They've never been the guy. Certainly could happen this year, but when you're projecting, I realize like we haven't quite seen that yet. We're talking about potential here. At running back, they're solid with Woody Marks coming over from Mississippi State. Woody Marks was good at Mississippi State. Now look, they didn't run the ball a ton, obviously, when Mike Leach was there. He was one of their top 2 backs for a couple of years, but he's never rushed for over 600 yards in a season. Can he surpass that number at USC this year in that offense with Lincoln Riley, how prolific they typically are? Sure. He has the potential to be 1,000-yard running back. I think he's a good back. But is he a surefire, like elite top 5 back in the country? We don't know that right now. I would say they have a pretty good, okay offensive line, but not one of the top 5, probably not even one of the top 10 offensive lines in the country coming this year. So I don't think USC should be at the top, even though obviously you do have Lincoln Riley, who is an offensive mastermind. We understand that. Then you look at Georgia. Well, Georgia's actually, of those 3 teams the last 2 years that on average have been the best 3 offenses in the country, Georgia's the only one of those 3 teams that returns a starting quarterback. And that starting quarterback, Carson Beck, also just so happens to be almost universally regarded as the top returning quarterback in the country. He's the betting favorite right now to win the Heisman Trophy. Doesn't mean he'll win it, but he's the betting favorite. Gives you an idea what people think about him. Also has a strong chance to potentially develop into the number 1 overall draft pick in next year's NFL draft. So that's a great starting point, right? The only team of those top 3 offenses the past years to have a returning starter at quarterback. Georgia projects to have one of the, if not the best offensive lines in the country, 4 returning stars on that unit from one of the best units in the country last year, certainly one of the best units in protecting the passer. No Brock Bowers, no Ladd McConkey. We have to throw that out there. That's true. But we also have 2 guys returning this year in Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas that led their respective teams, Missouri and Mississippi State, in receiving prior to coming to Georgia. They've proven it, guys. They didn't do it like they were good last year for Georgia. They weren't the top guys because we had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers when they were healthy. But when those guys weren't healthy, you saw Dominic Lovett, you saw Ra Thomas step up, and they've done it in the SEC. We're not talking about a lower level. We're talking about in the SEC. They've been the guy at other SEC programs. So with Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey moving along this year, they can be those guys once again in the Georgia receiving room. Georgia has, I mean, you can argue it if you want, but I think it's pretty clear. Georgia has the best overall tight end room in the country. You got Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky. Now you have Benjamin Urosic coming over from Stanford. If you're not familiar with that name, guys, I know I say this a lot, but for anyone who's found this podcast for the first time, let me throw it out there for you guys. There's only 3 tight ends over the last 3 years that have put up more yards receiving from the tight end position than Benjamin Urosic. And those 3 tight ends are Brock Bowers, arguably the greatest tight end in college football history, the only 2-time Mackey Award-winning tight end in college football history, Michael Mayer, who was a stud in his own right at Notre Dame, now in the NFL, and Dalton Kincaid from Utah, who's now starting for the Buffalo Bills. That's the list, guys. That's it. It's the only 3 guys that have put up more yards at tight end than Benjamin Urosic over the last 3 years. And Urosic missed half of last year with an injury, guys. He's coming over and will likely fill in that mover tight end role that Brock Bowers played so effectively for Georgia over the last 3 years. Will he beat Brock Bowers? No. But he can do a lot of the same things that Brock Bowers has done, which, by the way, you can check out the video I did on that, a film study video laying out exactly what I'm talking about. So go back and check that out if you want some more breakdown, a bigger breakdown of what Benjamin Urosic is going to bring to the table. Now, Oregon is also going to be awesome, guys. Oregon's going to be great. They have a really good quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. I will say, Dylan Gabriel's been a starter before, but not at Oregon. New team, somewhat of a new system here, new receiving weapons to throw to. You got to get more of a rapport with those guys. So I would give Georgia the edge right now at quarterback with Carson Beck returning within that same system, really for his 4th year in the system, his 2nd full year as a starter. Oregon has 2 really good receivers. Evan Stewart could potentially be the best receiver in the country. in that offense? Absolutely, he could be. Tez Johnson wasn't the top guy for Oregon last year, but was a really good supplementary piece. Could be a much bigger piece of the puzzle for them this year. Really good player, dynamic receiver. Two really solid running backs in Noah Whittington and Jordan James. I would also say one of the best offensive lines in the entire country right there with UGA. Not much of a gap there. So, I mean, look, you're truly splitting hairs between Georgia and Oregon offensively. I think it's those two offenses that have the best argument to be ranked number one in EA Sports offensive ratings. So yeah, that's why, guys, that's why I think it's entirely defensible for EA Sports to have those two teams tied atop the rankings with a 94 offensive rating. Like, you could put Oregon at number one if you want to, and I'm not going to fight you. Again, I think Oregon's offense is going to be dynamic this year. It'll be electric. I think Oregon's going to be one of the best teams in the country. I mean, I think they're one of the 2 to 3 top national title favorites, in my opinion. If they can beat Ohio State when they play them in Eugene, like, watch out for Oregon. That could be a very, very dangerous team this year. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Dan Lanning, know him very well, obviously. So if you put Oregon loaded number one, I wouldn't fight you. I mean, that's a strong pick. But while many have been clutching on to this old narrative of Georgia's offense being some sort of relative weakness, certainly relative to the defense, the Dogs have just, I don't even think quietly, I mean, it's been clear, but for those who have not been paying attention, the Dogs have spent the past 2 years burying that notion that the offense is not up to par with the defense. In fact, if you go look at the numbers, guys, over the last 2 years, certainly last year in 2023, the Georgia offense statistically was the superior unit. It was better than the Georgia defense. Georgia defense was still top 10 caliber. The Georgia offense was top 5 caliber, guys. I mean, the Georgia offense, I don't want to say carried the team because the defense was still really, really good, but the offense was better than the defense last year. And I don't think the rank and file average college football fan actually realizes that the way that maybe Georgia fans do, because we watch these games week in and week out. And I've been doing this podcast for 10 years, and obviously we break things down for you guys. So we might have a little bit more of a frame of reference to work off of than other people, but it just simply could not be any more clear. I've said it about 10 times already. Let me say it again. The Georgia offense, guys, has evolved not just to a really good unit relative to what it used to be, it has evolved into one of the best offenses in the country. And with that elite offense that we've seen over the past couple of years, along with the consistently elite Georgia defense and the way that Georgia consistently recruits under Kirby Smart, always having one of the top 2 to 3 most talented rosters in the country, that has to be alarming for the rest of the country. I'm a child of the 90s, okay? So forgive me for going back in time here. Some of you, this reference might be over your head. You have no idea what I'm talking about. But for people like me, it's kind of like when Happy Gilmore, right? One of the movies I grew up on. So when Happy Gilmore finally learned how to putt, right? So he's going to the final tournament. He's like playing against, not just against Shooter McGavin, but if he beats Shooter McGavin, he wins the tournament, he gets his grandma's house back, right? Kind of butchering it, but that's the general idea. But we always know that Happy Gilmore, he had the long drive and he could hit the ball 500 miles, but had no short game, right? But then going in that final tournament, he puts the time in and he learns how to putt, right? And so he goes in that tournament, and then one of the first holes, he gets on the green and he knocks a long putt in, and he turns to Shooter McGavin, and Happy says, "Uh-oh, Happy learned how to putt," right? I'm sure I butchered that, but something along those lines. So, again, Happy always had that ace in the hole, always had the long drive, right? But he didn't have the complete game because he didn't have the short game, didn't have the putting game, right? Well, Georgia's in a similar way. Georgia's always had that ace in the hole, which has been the Georgia defense, has always been the recruiting talent that we bring in year after year. But we didn't have the total game because our offense was not up to par, certainly in the early years of the Kirby Smart tenure. But, Georgia learned how to play offense and has unequivocally one of the best offenses in the country over the past couple of years. And that doesn't look to change anytime soon. And that is why the Georgia Bulldogs will continue to be a problem for teams across the country for years to come. And it's also why EA Sports didn't get it wrong, guys. You can have an issue with it all you want. That's your prerogative. Do as you please. But as I laid out for you here today, it's entirely defensible and actually accurate for EA Sports to have Georgia's offense ranked atop the offensive rankings heading into the 2024 season. All right, guys, I appreciate you checking out this video. Thanks for being here. Sincerely, absolutely. If you enjoy this content, which I hope you did, if you stuck out this long, I hope you enjoyed it and just subject yourself to that. But go ahead, guys. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel right now so you get more content just like this uploaded directly to your YouTube feed. We're going to have a ton of content like this leading up to the 2024 season, certainly through the season. And while we're at it, If you enjoyed the video, let's like, comment, let me know what you think. And of course, check out the Glory UGA podcast for a lot more Georgia sports college ball content for you guys. And this is just a small taste of what we've got going on the Glory UGA podcast. So check that out wherever you get your podcast. Thank you again for being here. I'm Tyler. And as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.